Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault 2, and I'm out here in the garage again with another garage gun talk. Or maybe this one's going to be a garage ramblings because I want to talk about something once again that's kind of been on my mind regarding gun laws and the application of gun laws and trying to be a more effective communicator to people in the firearms community so we can have more nuanced discussions. And I'm just out here in the garage actually getting ready to clean my wife's pink Hello Kitty AR-15 that I built for her. We used this in a couple of product reviews, and she wanted to go take it to the range and shoot it, so time to clean it up and put it back in the safe. But before I do that, I wanted to talk about something that I've been thinking about the past couple of days. You guys know I've been making a couple of videos talking about not calling people out on social media, just being good fellow members of the gun community. And I've been discussing things with certain people in the comment section, and I've really been working hard on trying to be the best communicator that I can be. I really feel that the use of proper words, terminology, is very important when it comes to making sure the other side understands concepts. And so I want to talk about a concept today that I think the gun community in general would benefit by thinking about and contemplating from time to time. And that is the theory of law versus the practice of law. Because there's so many things in life that are theoretical in nature. And it can be everything from, religion or science to how we would create like a manual for doing some task around the house, okay? There's things that work on paper and there's things that work in application. And when it comes to gun laws, I really think we need to clear this up. And I'm going to give a couple of personal examples outside of the gun community, and then we'll talk about specifically about gun law. So we'll start off with a religious example, okay? As I always kind of joke, in many of my videos, people say, shall not be infringed when it comes to the Second Amendment. I'll talk about Larry Vickers or Matt Hoover or the ATF pistol brace rule. And the shall not be infringed, people come out and just type that in the comment section as though it's going to change something. And they'll always say, all gun laws are unconstitutional. Well, let's talk biblically for a second. Now, I am not a biblical scholar, but I know enough maybe to be dangerous, right? So one of the 10 commandments is thou shalt not kill. So we have shall not be infringed and shall not kill. However, I can guarantee you that a lot of you would actually find that there is a time to kill. And for example, maybe some of you guys believe in the death penalty. Probably not all, but some people. And so while you're not personally doing the killing, your government and people that represent you in government have been given the authority to kill others on your behalf. So you have a criminal that's done heinous crimes of murder, and we as a society have deemed it in certain locations acceptable for the state to commit murder and kill this person. But I thought shall not kill, it doesn't mean all the time. And I think a lot of you guys would have to go, wait, hold on a second. The Bible says you can't kill, but it's okay to kill, I think, right? And I've said like someone that has been, adjudicated, had their day in court and been sentenced to death row. Or what about our military, for example? If shall not kill is absolute, right? That would mean that all killings are wrong, but yet we have a military that goes around the world in your name, and of course I'm talking to all the U.S. citizens here, and does things. Now, some of us can think it's just or unjust, but they're still killing in your name, There are certain conflicts that possibly a lot of you guys would think are justified. Maybe there's a bad dictator somewhere around the world that's committing genocide upon innocent people, and you think it's okay for us to go in and use lethal force to defend these innocent people. Well, shall not kill, right? Well, it's like shall not be infringed. Does it really mean 100% absolute? Now, I know what some of you guys are very frantically typing in the comment section. You're thinking I'm bringing up the argument that many of the anti-gunners say of no right is unlimited. And I'm not doing that. I'm just asking you to self-reflect, because we all have to battle and think about these issues ourselves. It's these moral and ethical debates that we have forever. It's just part of the nature of being a human being. So that's one example. Another example is to tell you a little bit more about myself. You guys know, and I mention this quite often, that I'm a music teacher. I'm a professional musician. I hold a bachelor's degree, master's degree, and a doctorate degree in music performance. In fact, if you're ever in the Library of Congress and want to read my dissertation, it is in the Library of Congress. It's the creation of a performance edition of the Georg Wagenseil Alto Trombone Concerto with attention given to primary sources of the 17th century. Yeah, if you ever have a problem going to sleep at night and need something to bore you to death, my dissertation would do the trick. And I got all of my degrees in performance, but I mentioned I'm a teacher. It's my main source of income. I teach private lessons. I used to teach college. For a while, I was a college professor. And now I teach grade levels 6 through 12, essentially. And then on top of that, I do all my own performing and all that kind of stuff. And one of the greatest compliments I ever received was from the grandmother of one of my students. I was at their home teaching a lesson. And this grandmother is a retired lifetime educator. She was a principal. She was extremely intelligent. Also taught college level courses in education in general. And she also sits on a school board. And she told me once, she said, "You're a fantastic teacher," because she was listening in to me teaching her grandson. And then we got talking about the art of teaching versus the practice of teaching, because schools do not do a good job of educating future educators. A lot of it is just BS work. But there's this theory behind education. Like if you ever go to a college and you want to, teach math or science at the high school level, you have to take stupid classes like teaching diverse populations, okay? Something like that. And the whole class is going to be a bunch of woke nonsense about, if you have students of a certain background, a certain socioeconomic status, you have to use these words and do this and organize your curriculum in this way. It's all BS, okay? You want to know how I teach diverse populations? I treat everybody the same. I treat them with respect. And as a teacher, I try to figure out what the student needs and provide for them. That's it. And I never took any education classes, but I think I'm a pretty effective educator. I've had a great deal of success, and I feel well respected by my colleagues and peers. So there's the science of teaching, the theory of teaching. And I know a lot of teachers that have, master's degrees in education and education administration that are horrible teachers. They're just horrible teachers. I'm not saying they're horrible people, but you can tell that this is not something that comes naturally to them. And by the way, that's okay. But they could sit down and lecture me on the theory of teaching, but they can't do it themselves. They can't put it into practice, because the actual practice of education and the theory of education are very different. Because it's easy to say, well, if you have a class like this, you structure it this way, you do this, but then there's so many human variables that you can't take into account on some type of rubric to follow, Let's go into, I'm trying to think of another good example, like a political one. Let's talk about Marxism and communism. We always hear on paper, the Communist Manifesto written by, Karl Marx and, Friedrich Engels, that on paper and in theory, it works well. You look at it and go, wow, this would be a great thing, and so forth. People will talk about its virtues and how everything's egalitarian, and if everybody does what they're supposed to do, everybody lives in harmony. But we all know in practice that's not the case. And why isn't that the case? It's because we're human beings. And while you might get the job and pull the straw that you're going to be the worker in the field picking the rice, well, after a while you're tired of picking the rice. You want something better for yourself personally. Not that you want to hurt anybody, but then the whole system breaks down because now you're no longer picking rice and you have jealousy and envy of people that might be working indoors at a bank or whatever. Or the whole system collapses because of the human condition and all the human variables involved. So in theory, communism or Marxism might work, but in practice, we all know it leads to the deaths of millions and millions of people. And we have real-world examples from the Soviet Union and China, North Korea, you name it, right? But now let's talk about guns, okay? We're going full circle here back to guns. You guys know I love to clone or to build clone rifles. I like the Mark 18s, I like the Mark 12s. And I build my clones, my philosophy is to build them the way that they left Crane or the military as they were going out to be issued. And one of the criticisms people have of my clone rifle builds is that, yes, they were issued that way, but that's not the way the people in the field carried them. Because once these rifles got into the hands of the actual Special Forces operators, they would take things off and put on their own things to customize them to their needs. Or they would go, the people that built these things might have had a good or might have had good intentions. In the field, we don't need this accessory. We need this accessory. This is actually what's going to work better. And so they would customize them after the fact. And people would say that my clone rifle builds are not accurate because I build them as they were issued and not the way that they were carried. And that goes back to, once again, theory versus practice. In theory, the people that were sitting there in the Naval Special Weapons program, we're looking at these things, and on paper, we're probably creating diagrams and lists and going, what do the soldiers in the field do? What do our special operators need? Well, according to our research, this type of engagement is done like this and blah, 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 and they need this accessory. And so they would build the guns based off of the math, okay, the theory of warfare. And then once it got put into practice, the actual end users would change things out and going, these people did not send us the rifle that we truly need. We're going to make it our own. So in practice, it was different. So let's talk about now gun laws, okay? I know this has been a long video, but you don't subscribe to the Texas Gun Vault 2 because you like short and concise things, okay? Sometimes I just like to hear myself talk, apparently, I guess. But let's talk about gun laws real fast. One of the problems that we see with many gun laws and the shall not be infringed people and so forth, is they don't understand the difference between theory and practice. So for example, whenever we hear about these changes to like the ATF 4473 or to some type of rule that's been proposed, we have plethora of channels out there that all go crazy talking about how it's the end of the world. I mean, we can go back in time, and it's not like, oh, this is a one-off thing or happens once in a while. Like literally every single rule change, every single law that's proposed, you will get the usual suspects out there. This is the greatest infringement of all time. They're coming for your guns. You're all going to be felons. You're all going to be arrested and put into FEMA camps. We're all going to die. I mean, literally, that's what they always talk about, but none of it ever comes true. Do you ever kind of scratch your head and go, okay, I understand that sometimes you look at these things and go, oh my God, this is a big deal. And then when it all happens, you're like, okay, not a single person got arrested. Nothing bad's happened. I'm not saying it's not an infringement. I'm just saying like it wasn't the end of the world like everybody was panicking and freaking out over. And after so many times of this, you got to start asking yourself, what's the real story here? For example, there was that whole proposed rule about the storage of ammunition and things. And you had people absolutely freaking out about they're going to come and warrantless search your house if you have a gun, because if you store your ammunition wrong, they're going to get arrested and you're going to be a felon and they're going to lock you up. It's like, well, okay, first off, They ain't coming into your house without a warrant. It's like when I was talking about the pistol brace stuff. People said, well, if you had possession of the pistol brace and the pistol, which, by the way, was completely legal, even if you had them, if it was separated, people were like, well, you're a felon. Well, first off, the only way that they would ever really know that you had it is if they were in your house. And let me tell you, if they're in your house, you already have bigger problems than just that, right? Why are they in your house? It means they either have a warrant for something, right? Or you were stupid enough to let them in and they're doing an investigation and you gave them permission to search your house. So if they're in your house, you already have bigger fish to fry than worrying about, oh my gosh, you have a pistol and a brace under the same roof. Like literally, that's probably the least of your concerns at that moment. But getting back to it, I understand why so many gun owners will look at these rule changes or look at these laws, and maybe through the prism and their perspective as a layman. And I don't mean that in any kind of derogatory term. That's just the term that we can use as someone that's not an attorney or so forth. And you look at this and you kind of game it out in your mind. Okay, so the ATF gives a very vague thing about pistol braces, okay? Let's go back to that 922R compliance stuff. In theory, we know it says, according to federal law, that you're not allowed to manufacture a rifle or a shotgun that is banned from importation if it's made from so many imported parts, okay? We all know the 922R compliance stuff. We know it's not really enforced in practice. As I said, that no one has ever been charged with that as a standalone charge. It's always been an upcharge, like, oh, you had an illegal SBR that would have fallen under this category. You robbed the bank. They arrested you for it. So not only are you on, federal bank robbery charges, you're on NFA charges. And then like, we can get you on 922R compliance as well. That's what it always is. It's always that add-on charge. So everyone, when the pistol brace rule thing happened and the amnesty registration, so on paper it says you can't have a non-922R compliant rifle, but then everyone saw, okay, well, if they're classifying these pistols now as rifles with the pistol brace attached, now it's a rifle, therefore it would fall under 922R and you're a felon, so if you amnesty register a B&T, they're going to come to your house because you've admitted to a felony. And it's like, no, I mean, come on. Name me one example of that happening. I mean, I can go back and you can look at video after video after video after video of various YouTubers talking about this. People that were legal scholars. People say I can't talk about this because I'm not a lawyer. But I can point to lawyers all the time online that in my opinion are absolute idiots because nothing they say ever comes to fruition. Not a single thing. Okay? So if your attorney is wrong all the time, my suggestion to you is go find another attorney. That's just my personal opinion, okay? I mean, you do whatever it is you want. But nobody got charged with 922R compliance. And in fact, the ATF even had to address this because they knew in practice this was an impossibility. They knew that gun confiscation wasn't going to work. They knew that going around to people with 922R compliance that had no idea that even 922R even existed, that were otherwise law-abiding citizens, and confiscate guns, that wasn't going to work, okay? It was bad PR. So what did they do? They just said, listen, it's okay. So in practice, you bought it as a pistol. We know that. And it was legal as a pistol, okay? And now we're defining it as a rifle if you have the pistol brace on it and you amnesty register it or whatever. So 922R compliance doesn't affect this because they don't enforce it anyway. But everybody was panicking because on paper, in theory, it looks like 922R is this. Now pistols are rifles, therefore it's the same thing. Panic time! Panic in theory! We're all felons! I think you guys see where I'm going with this. So what was on paper and what was theoretical and what happened in practice were two totally different things. And we see this all the time in so many aspects of our lives. And so I think that as gun owners and consumers of gun content, gun news, gun media, whenever we hear about a rule change, whenever we see a law being passed, whenever any of these things happen, and you have the fearmongers, those preachers I was telling about, the fire and brimstone people out there saying, you're now going to be a felon overnight, and they're coming to kill your dog and arrest you, and we're all going to jail. Hundreds of millions of people are now all going to jail. Ask yourself, in practice, is that really going to happen? Is that viable? Where in our U.S. history and tradition do we have an example of this? Listen, don't get me wrong. Our government can probably be pretty darn tyrannical, okay? And a lot of our gun laws are unconstitutional. But in practice, when have they said 1/3 of the U.S. population is illegal, we're going to get law enforcement to go around and arrest everybody? It doesn't happen because that's not practical, it's not viable, and it's not moral or ethical or any of those things. So that's what I think we all have to take into account when it comes to the application of law, the application of rules, and understanding the difference between theory and practice. And I think if a lot of us went through this mental exercise, I think a lot of people's anxiety about, worrying about the future would be greatly diminished, because they would understand, okay, I know what in theory can happen. We're all felons, whatever. But in practice, is that really what's going to happen? And we have so many examples of this. But yet when these YouTubers come out and it's all fear-mongering, panic, you're all a felon, everybody gets all anxious and crazy and goes just, just goes ballistic, So anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about. So what do you guys think about the difference between theoretical and practical knowledge? Theory does not mean it's going to work in practice. It almost never does. So why in the gun world does everybody panic? But that's why I think everybody does panic, because they don't understand the application of theory and the application of practice. So that's what I wanted to talk about tonight. Might be a little bit intellectual for some and really boring for others. So let me know what you think in the comment section below. And as always, thanks for watching.